Welcome back to the channel. Let's take a look at my 90 Harley-Davidson Sportster 883. Hopefully I got that right. I bought this bike about 2 years ago. It was completely a basket case. It pretty much got it with just the wheels, the engine, the frame, what else? Some handlebars on there, all assembled but not running. No wiring, no nothing. All the electricals had been taken out. I had to buy all kinds of stuff just to get it back to where it is now. I haven't finished all the work because I ended up being stalled out because of a missing part that took forever to get. And then I kind of just, I guess in a way, lost interest. Now, some of the parts that I bought are not yet still on it, and that's what we're going to take a look later on in this video. But I'll give you a little bit of an overview of how I pretty much had this bike when I first picked it up. So let's start by the back. So it had no fender on it. This is the original fender, but somebody cut it. I just cleaned it up, repainted it black. I just used some Rust-Oleum type or trim-clad type paint, and that's it. It came with bags and a rack. I still got to put that on. Right now the fender is just kind of floating there with one bolt in it just to put it in place so I know where it's going to be. The rear rotor on it was completely rusted and actually had a crack in it. Somebody had removed the caliper off of it and the brake pads and all that, just so that way they could be able to rotate it. The chain was in okay condition, and unfortunately where I had it stored, some snow got in and kind of rusted out the chain, and then it basically seized up and I could not move the bike at all. So the chain is changed, and I also changed the sprocket, both front and back. When I got it, it did have the cover here and all the stuff attached. Not very well. It was kind of loose. I know there's probably some bolts missing here, but I'll have to double check. The neutral light switch is actually completely broken. As you can see here, it should be in the center, but it's actually kind of bent upwards. So that's going to be replaced. The original controls on here are not available. I don't have them. And what it came with is these forward controls, which I'm in the process of kind of readjusting and all that. The ignition control module was, well, not the ignition control module, but just the timing. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, I can't remember, forgive me. But I had to put all that back in and redo the wiring. Somebody had snipped it and then pulled it out. I just ran it back through and put it back in. It's kind of wound up in there somewhere. The master cylinder that's there, I went to actually rebuild it and then ended up cracking it. So then I had to buy a brand new one. It took a little while to get that one, but I do have it. So I'm going to try and install that in this video. The air cleaner and the carburetor, it came with that. It was missing the cover that goes here. I have it. I just have yet to install it because I want to try and keep it nice and clean, but I'll show you that later. The carb was supposedly rebuilt, but when I opened it up, it was still a mess in there. The, what's it called? The power valve was kind of dirty, had junk in it. Some of the like brass jets and all that stuff were dirty. They had stuff in them. Anyway, I bought a whole rebuild kit for that, and now it's all brand new in there. Still have yet to put any fuel in there, so hopefully everything is okay. I did have an issue with one of the pieces. I think it was part of the pilot or something like that. I can't quite remember, or the mix. I almost was not able to get that out. Luckily, for whatever reason, it just worked, and I popped it out and replaced it. So hopefully everything is good. Everything is brand new. Carbon choke cleaner. I think I went through 1 or 2 cans just to make sure that this was nice and clean. The, I think it's called a VOS or something like that. Something to do with the timing and vacuum pressure. I'm not quite familiar with that, but I do know it affects the computer and where it puts the ignition. So on the ignition, actually, I want to mention that I kind of just put it in the default section. I don't know if it's in the right position 100%, but it should at least pop off once everything is good and done, and that way I'll know if everything is okay. So none of the wiring was there, none of this stuff was there. Right now I have it kind of set up where it's going to be a temporary permanent solution until I get back into this bike and kind of really tear it down. In the front, the fender wasn't attached. Again, just repainted it, just a gloss black, same type of paint as the rear fender. Again, changed the rotor, rebuilt, actually, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I rebuilt the rear and front calipers just to make sure that everything was okay. Everything was replaced, the piston, the seals, everything. I also went in the front and in the back, replaced the entire brake lines. I got braided stainless steel lines. I like these. I use something similar on my KLR 650 and they're great. Now, something I'm not going to show you is I actually ended up also changing the clutch cable, the clutch plates and pads. but I realized I think I have a leak on the gasket, and I think I might have to go and tear into that again. There was no oil in it over the winter, and I just kind of noticed that it was empty, so I put some in, and then that's when I realized that it was leaking. I checked the bolts, they're all good, so it's not that. And as you can see, that's the leak that I'm talking about. So I'm gonna have to go through this again and just make sure that everything is okay. It came with a battery, but it was the wrong battery. It was too tall. It might have been for another bike. I'm not 100% sure. So I had the battery replaced. I also went ahead and changed the cables. I went to 4 gauge, so that now they're a little bit thicker. Should be able to provide really good amperage. Front and rear suspension, I haven't really done anything with that. They're pretty much stock. The handlebars that were on here were like 8-hanger style handlebars, and I'm not a fan of those. It's just not my style. I prefer more of a drag bar on this type of bike. The other thing is that the handlebars were aftermarket, and they didn't accommodate these controls on them, because this wire is run through underneath the clamp on these controls, and on this handlebar here there's actually a groove cut out so that way the wire goes in properly. And that was one of the issues. Like all the controls would have had to have been changed if I went with the 8 hangers, so maybe I just saved myself a little bit of money there. This is stock. I didn't do anything with that. It's just whatever came with the bike. I had to buy new mirrors because it didn't come with them. I also rebuilt that master cylinder. Everything works fine. It's actually working right now, and works actually really good. It's pretty solid. I don't have any issues with that. I had to get a Speedo. I had issues with the Speedo cable. If you buy the wrong one, sometimes it doesn't fit straight up in here. And then I had to get an adapter to take, I guess, what was close to the stock one and then downsize it to be able to fit on this gauge. Now I know it works because where you see that 6 right there, that's me just kind of spinning the wheel over and over just to make sure that everything works good. It did come with a headlight. The only problem is that that headlight has a band on it to hold the actual bulb in the casing, and I didn't have that band. It might have held up for a while, but I didn't want to risk it. So what I ended up doing is replacing it. I got this like 5-inch style bobber style light, and I made a brand new bracket for it. It's nothing special. Again, I just kind of quickly did it. It's nothing fancy. It kind of hides behind everything so you don't really see it. And I just kind of put it in its place. I still have to kind of set it up, but I'm still working on the wiring, so all that has to be fixed. I had to buy new indicators for it, both front and back. They're kind of smoke lenses. They are amber in the front and red in the rear, which is great. It came with a bit of a license plate and kind of like the old, I think it's a Model A type brake light. I'll show you that later. But anyway, I had to kind of customize something here to get it to fit in these places. These are the stock holes for the original light. I had to create these 2 holes here to be able to put that license plate holder and the light up top. And then I'm going to have to go through and run all the wiring. Also had to get a new horn because it didn't come with one. Got a new choke cable, and also got a new lock. Kind of looks like those vending machine style ones. Just picked that one because no price difference, and I thought it would be kind of interesting. So I had to rewire all that too. Now I don't know where the module was for like the blinkers and the 4-ways and all that. So I ended up having to buy a new module here. They're not crazy expensive, but they are kind of expensive when you think about what it does. But here's the new module. That's all set up. I brought everything in here. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that's still not yet connected. All the relays, the fuses, all this stuff are all in there. They're the same fuses that it would have had before, but they were more in the breaker style. The breaker style, if I have this correct, basically they'll work all the way up until they reach a certain temperature, and then they flip open. Or is it open or closed? I can't remember. They flip open where they don't make the contact, and then it shuts off, and then as it cools down, it falls back into place. Now, I could have easily have put them back in there, but I'm just used to this kind of stuff here and fuses and all this stuff. And I think fuses break faster than the breakers, so that might actually help in the long run. I don't know though. Maybe somebody else has a different experience and a different opinion. Maybe you can just put that in the comments below if you want. So pretty much that's it. Like I said, I bought this bike about 2 years ago. It kind of sat for, I would say maybe a year, and I started working on it last year. Got a bunch of parts, And honestly, the neutral switch is actually what held me back. It took almost 2 months to get just that tiny little thing, which is why I couldn't work on the stuff that's on the other side, like the cover and the controls and the, brakes and all this stuff. And then I think because I waited so long to receive that part, that I kind of just said, well, whatever. It was, I think, nearing the end of summer. So again, I guess I just wasn't in a hurry to put it together at that point, and I just kind of put it aside. Oh yeah, almost forgot. Because it's an aftermarket air filter, I'm not going to drill and cut holes and stuff and do things to kind of make them back like the original. So what I ended up doing, which is what it had before, but the filter was kind of broken, it just keeps the original hose down here and then goes through a filter. You can buy these anywhere. They're not that expensive. This stuff here, it just goes through a filter. If it needs to breathe, it'll breathe. And if there's any kind of oil that seeps back up into here or gets shot up in there, it'll come back down into the whole system. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. I also did change the throttle cable and the return cable. Just needs to be adjusted right now. I do have oil in there. Right now I just have some to basically keep it from, I guess, rusting out or whatever. And once I get ready to turn it over and start it, I'll have something, but I will do a proper full oil change and make sure that that is good. Now, in the beginning of last year or early last year, I did go ahead and see if some of these electricals work. So basically anything to do with the ignition and turning over. So the starter, I kind of hooked up or jerry-rigged some stuff up just to make sure all the connections were made. And I did turn it over. I did see spark on the spark plugs. I did shoot a little bit of fuel into the opening for the carb, and it took it in and it did pop off. So I know that the basics for this engine are good, but I don't know if there's anything else that's wrong with it. So basically what I'm going to try and do is just reassemble most of this stuff back together, get rid of some parts that are sitting on my table, and once I get to at least a higher up point and where I'm kind of comfortable, I'm going to go ahead and actually start it and see how well it runs, if it runs, and what else might be wrong with it. Oh yeah, before I forget, I do have a gas tank. It did come with one, but it's one of those aftermarket ones that are kind of universal and you got to drill points and stuff like that. I ended up buying one that fit this bike. It's a little bit bigger, I think, than the original or the one that I got. And it's kind of bolt in, so I should be pretty simple to throw back in and install and set up. But I do think that I might have an issue with the petcock. I think I got the wrong one, and now it's too late for me to return it because it's been way too long. But I'll figure that out once I get there. Either way, when I do test it, I will just use a small 1 liter lawnmower, gas tank is what I'll use and test it with. All right, let me start throwing back some parts on here and try and get this side set up and done, get the exhaust done, and see what else I want to do at that point. All right, so I'm going to start with the piece that held me up the most. So this is the original neutral switch. This is the one I just took out. As you can see, it's kind of bent, doesn't stick out right. I'm not even sure if it operates properly. And here's the new one. It looks a lot better, definitely a much nicer unit, and this definitely moves a lot more than this one here. That doesn't really do much for me right now. It does require a special little clip that goes onto the end here. It's kind of like a cup or something, and then just fits on the end right here. So I'm gonna have to redo that. I did have a wire that ran to it, and I'll just set that up real easy. All right, so the neutral light switch is installed. The connection is made. I routed the wire kind of right up around here. Probably gonna put a couple of zip ties in there just to make sure it holds tight. But even if it were to come loose, it's not going to fall into the chain. You can see that it's just going to fall down over there. It's being held by this spacer or something that's right here. Also went ahead and just kind of connected the wires just to test it out, just to make sure that it works. Turn the key on, and there you go. So we know that that works. So the green one, if you can tell, I don't know, it's a little hard because they're really close to each other. This green one here, that's the neutral, and that's the oil pressure switch, which reminds me that was another thing that I had to change because that wasn't working. Got the cover on. I also added the zip ties, so that's all good. Didn't tighten that bolt because that's part of the exhaust. It's basically a hanger that goes there. And just for your information, these 3 bolts are different lengths, so just make sure you put them back in the right place. I'm now going to go ahead and put the brake master cylinder for the rear wheel. All right, got the rear brake master cylinder installed. It's pretty much all connected. I'm gonna have to do some adjustments at a later point. I still gotta fill it with brake fluid and kind of bleed the brake just to make sure that that works. Since I changed pretty much all the hoses and all that, now These brake hoses are different from the stock ones. I kind of did a little bit of a custom job, which means it removed a block on the other side that held the brake light switch. So I ended up getting one of these kind of banjo style brake light switches and installed that. I haven't tested it yet, but I'll test that later when I get to that point. I'm going to go ahead and bleed the brakes and just make sure that that works okay. Hopefully this loop up here doesn't give me too much of a problem, but I'll find out. All right, spent some time doing a bunch of little things and checked out a few other things, but I started with the exhaust and pulled the exhaust studs out. I often find that I have issues with these. The two back ones seem to be okay. I got the two front ones out okay too. The only thing I noticed was that one of them was just the same threading all the way through. So it's basically they put in all thread and then popped in a bolt. The other one, which was this one here, there was an issue with the threads in there, and I tried fixing it, but I ended up kind of making it worse. So I'm actually going to have to get two studs. The other two for the rear were all right. I didn't have too many issues. It was just in a tight spot trying to get them out, but they ended up coming out. No real difficulty. One was a little stiff, but the other one was all right. The other thing that I went and did is I got all the mounting for the rear fender. I kind of played around with that. I actually had forgotten how these were set up. I mean, the last time I pulled them out was probably a year ago, maybe 3/4 of a year ago, something like that. So I spent some time trying to figure out how these went. I kind of figured it out. I grabbed the bag and kind of just set them up. There's the bag. And figured out the positions and stuff like that. So I think I got it. What I'm going to do is just cut some pieces of all thread and set some stuff up. I'll show you how it was set up before with these little clips, but what I want to do is actually just make them into all thread and have it bolted so that way that stays on there and you can't just, you know, pull the bag off and walk away with it. I also popped this on. I wanted to do that because I know that the bolts are a little longer than you want them to be, and I'm afraid that they're just going to hit the tire, and I don't want that. The other thing that I noticed too is that these indicator lights don't actually sit flush on the bracket that I made. I had to make all of this here because they're not sitting on the same position as they were in the back, because now the bags took over the space where the indicator used to go. And as you can see, it doesn't sit straight, and I kind of want it to sit kind of flush. So I'm probably going to throw in a couple of washers. So I think what I'm going to do is just mark this stuff, get the stuff cut and set up. I have some all thread that I'm going to use for that. I kind of put all this stuff together and actually get it all set up so that way I can actually go ahead and do the wiring, clean that up, and then put that away. All right, so pretty much got everything mounted, and well, this isn't actually quite secure yet because I still need to do a few adjustments for the bag, but this is mounted on there. All I had to do was just trim this little screw, and then I just put some Loctite on the back side of the nut. And as you can see, I added a washer. It's pretty much all I needed. This is all secure, nice and tight. I did have to kind of notch it so that way I could get it over there because the wires are in the bolt, so it makes it hard to actually like take the nut off and stuff like that. I even notched this part similar to this, and that's how I got that to fit on there. But that was all I needed as a spacer. As for the bag rack, basically this is pretty much what the finished thing is going to look like. I got a Loctite stuff. I'm actually going to get a different kind of Loctite. Oh, and I just realized I got to trim that. I'm going to get a different kind of Loctite just to make sure that it's a little bit more secure. I have the temporary kind. I kind of want the more permanent kind, and that way that will stay secure and permanent there. So just to show you, this is kind of the bracket that goes, or the piece that goes into the bag. And as you can tell that there's a hollow piece there, and it's kind of notched, right? It used to have this thing in there. It's kind of hard for me to show you, but there's like a little spring and a clip that you kind of twist into it, and it holds the bag in place. And this is what the piece looked like. Now, I was missing one of these, and I was actually talking to somebody else, and they actually bolted theirs, and I thought that was a good idea. So rather than buying one of these and replacing it, or having to buy a kit and having too many parts, I opted to run the bolt like this. Well, here's a better shot. This is kind of what I'm going for. So the bag will rest on this part here, and then the washer will actually hold it securely in there. I'm going to get a bigger washer. This one's just there temporarily to make sure I had a good spacing, but then that locks the bag in place. Now, it's not bulletproof, but at least it'll hold it in there a lot more secure than just having one of those little clips like this, and it won't fall off or be easy to grab. So that's pretty much it on this side. I got to do the other side, so let me go ahead and do that. All right. So it's all set up on both sides. Again, I just got to do a little bit of Loctite and just a little bit of an adjustment, but that's all good. That's installed. I'm going to work on the wiring, get all this hooked up, pass through, clean this up, clean the junk that's up there a little bit, and just make it kind of neat and get it kind of ready to go. I'm pretty much almost there. I still got to get the exhaust studs, and I'm going to have to get the gasket for this, clean it up, and actually replace it. I'm not sure if the one that's on there is damaged or whatever, but I'm just not going to risk it. It's been leaking there since I've been here, and I had the bike pushed over a little bit forward, and it's leaking all there. So pretty much all the oil that's in here is just coming out. I'm not exactly sure what the issue is with that, but I'll take a look when I get there. All right, got all the wires connected, at least kind of in a rough way. They're not loomed up or anything, but everything is connected. Got a temporary battery set up, and what I'm going to do is just turn the key on into the lights position, which is all the way, and that basically should mean that all the lights come on. And I have the indicator lights there, they have their on position. Brake light is on the on position. The license plate works, and now I have a problem here. That's the indicator light, that shouldn't be on. That's the oil light, that should be on. And that's the neutral switch, which that's fine. The indicators are on, and the headlight is on. Let me see what happens when I do the headlight, the high beam, I mean. And that looks good. What about the horn? Yep, that works. What happens if we do a left turn? That's not working. If we do a right turn, that's not working. So maybe that's what the issue is with that. Brake light's going to be a little hard to see. It doesn't seem to be working. Yeah, that doesn't seem to be working either. So let me just take a quick look at that. Definitely wired something incorrectly, and see what happens. All right, I got the brake light working. Just needed a little splitter here, and also just kind of made a bit of a wrong connection, but that was fine, didn't do anything. So let me just take a look at the foot. See if I can set you up here. So this is a foot, and that works. See if I can do the hand. Yep, and that works too. So that's good. Now let me look at what's going on with the indicators and see what's happening there. Well, I think the only thing that's not working is actually just this little box for the indicators. There might be a short in it, because as soon as I turn the key on, there's power to the lights, even though there shouldn't be any power to it. It's a very low voltage, but there's still voltage going through, so I really think that something happened in here. There's a short. I'm not 100% sure what happened. As you can tell, I just disconnected everything and then just plugged it directly to the battery, so that way there was nothing else. And then it just connected a ground to all the lights, and they were on even though they shouldn't be on. I triggered the switch and it still didn't do anything. Everything else seems to work though. The brake lights, the horn and all that, they're working fine. So I'm going to take a look into maybe getting either a cheap alternative like an automotive style, or maybe replace this one. I'm not sure yet. I'll look into it. I still have to clean up all the wires. I'm going to do a little bit of that, and then I'm going to just leave this section kind of open in the back section, just to make sure that I can still see what's going on with the indicators and see if there's any other problems. But so far I haven't found any. All right, I just pulled it out because I actually want to try and turn it over and see what happens. I realized I did forget to loom the brake light switch here for the foot pedal. I did bleed the rear brake. Just don't do like I did and then forget to tighten all your connections. I had stuff leaking out all over the place, and it made it just a little bit more difficult to bleed the master cylinder for the rear. Also went ahead and finally installed the brackets and everything for the bags. They're just temporarily there. I will be taking them off. And as you can see, I don't have the full large washer. I do have them, but I just didn't install them yet. I got to re-drill the hole just to make it a little bit bigger to fit this threaded bolt. But that gives you an idea of how basically I'm going to make it permanent on the bike. I did have to flip this bracket here. Before it was pointing backwards here, and I flipped it so that way it's pointing forward that way. The reason is that this part was pretty much rubbing up against the bag, and I didn't really like that, and I just kind of repositioned it that way so that way it would fit a little bit better. I'm going to just run a double check on the electrical, get the battery, and then what I'll do is I'll just turn it over without the spark plugs in and make sure that that's okay, that there's no electrical issues there. Then what I'll do is I'll put them back in, turn it over, make sure that that's okay, see if there's spark at the same time, which I'm pretty sure there will be. I don't think that's an issue. And then I'll throw in a little bit of gas and see if it pops off and make sure that that's okay. And then I'll let it run for a few minutes and see how that goes. So I'll just kind of do it incrementally and make sure that everything is okay. All right, a bit of an odd setup for the battery, but hey, I guess if it works, it works. So I took out the spark plugs, both of them. I put them here. Hopefully I can get a little bit of ground and see if they're gonna spark. I'm not sure. This thing is pretty painted. All right, not sure if that's gonna work, but I'll give it a try anyway. Everything, I checked the lights and everything. I checked the connections. Should be okay. Yeah, some of the wires are still a little bit sloppy, but you know, let's just see what happens. Put that in the run and start. All right, woo, and I just saw some spark too. All right, that's good. Sounds strong, at least the starter does anyway. So let me get the spark plugs popped in. Got some spark. Let's turn it over with the spark plugs in there, make sure that there's nothing jamming up, and then see from there. Also just noticed that the oil light went out and it's still in neutral, so that's perfect. All right, just place the spark plugs. Should be okay. I'm just going to turn it over, make sure that that's okay. So you'll see the oil pressure light is also on there. It should go off shortly, hopefully. That's perfect. Sweet, that works pretty good. Pretty happy about that. So I'm gonna just get the tripod, connect a small kind of little lawnmower tank, and hook that up to the carburetor, and then just maybe try it with a little bit of gas and then see what happens. All right, so hooked up a gas tank. I'm actually just gonna put enough gas tank to fill the carb, and then I'm actually gonna shut that off. Then I'll go through the process of starting it. No, there's no exhaust. I'm still waiting on the studs. They should be coming in about a week from now. But it's not going to prevent me from starting it. It's just going to be a little extra loud. Doesn't seem to be leaking. Let's see. No way! Woo! Wow! I was literally not expecting that. That's awesome. I'm just going to try and get it to like fully warm up and actually run without the choke. So see what happens. I do have oil flowing, so that's really good. It's not blocked up. I do need to do an oil change, so I'm not too worried about that. Just checking to make sure I don't have any other kind of visible quick things that I need to check, but so far it seems to be good. Not quite there yet. Actually, you know what? Let me check the idle. Maybe that's what my issue is. It might be just a little bit too low. All right, I adjusted it just a little bit just to see what would happen. It might still be a little too low. Sounded good though. Really, really happy. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to drain the carb. I'm really happy. So just the last shot, drain the carb, and I'll do a look over just to make sure everything is good. Well, pretty happy. That runs really well. So a couple of things I still need to do. Obviously, like I said before, actually I think I've said it a few times, but I need to get the exhaust studs. I'm actually probably going to replace all 4 of them. Still need to finish up the wire stuff. Basically, I'm at the point with the wiring where if it works, I'm just going to tuck it in, squeeze it in, do whatever, just get it jammed in there. Like, this isn't pretty. But you know what? Like I said before, I had this thing for 2 years. I just want to get this thing running and back on the road. I would rather it be running and working rather than stuck in a garage somewhere, never being used or whatever the case may be. I don't care if somebody points that out to me and says, WTF. I don't care. I've been waiting too long to get this running, and right now I am super happy. It is running, seems to be running okay. Which is great. I still have some finishing touches. There's like a cover that's supposed to go there. I have the seat. I have the gas tank. I think I mentioned already that I might be having an issue with the petcock. That's the only thing that I think I have a problem with there. I still have to get the module for the indicators. I can't use an automotive style one because the buttons that are up, they're a momentary switch. They're not like an on-off switch type deal like you would have in a car. And I'm probably going to just do a few little things that I notice here and there, see what else I need to do. Oh, I did forget to mention that I did change the spring on the kickstand. This is what was on there before, but the thing is, this is not for this bike. It was too loose. The spring did not, the kickstand did not always spring back properly. It didn't lock into place. There's the replacement, and if you notice, it's a bit different. Like, that has a little bit of a longer extension, which is also something I noticed that it was getting kind of stuck up here and getting in the way of actually working the kickstand properly. But I'm just going to take a minute and kind of go over everything, just make sure that everything looks okay. I did look at it already, but I just want to do a double check just to make sure it's all good. Well, I have to say, overjoyed. I really had no idea what to expect from this. I had never heard it running prior to me buying it. So it feels pretty monumental, especially when I did all the wiring and stuff like that. I had no idea what I was doing. And on that, I think eventually what I will do is get one of those like universal wiring kits where all the wires are supplied for you. And they have really nice connectors, because right now I'm using butt connectors. So, they work, but, I want something a little bit tighter and a little bit better. I did go ahead and kind of clean up some of the wiring a little bit. Maybe you can't notice this bundle up here, but it's a little bit better than what it was before. It still needs some work, but again, I'm missing that indicator module, so I want to add that in there and then properly clean it up. And then basically, I'm just going to shove everything into this little pocket right here and pretend like I never saw it. So as I mentioned already, there's still a few things I need to add on to this bike. A lot of just little covers, the gas tank, exhaust, stuff like that. I'm going to leave that for another video. What I would like to do is, once it's fully assembled and running, I'm going to just go have it checked out by a mechanic just to make sure that everything is good. Again, I have no idea the condition of this bike and bearings and things like that. I'm not a mechanic by trade, so I want to make sure that it just has a look over just to make sure. It's not a requirement. It's just a mental health check, safety type thing where I feel like, okay, if some pro checked it, then it should be all right. So what I have planned for this bike in the future is that I would like to completely tear it down and clean everything up 100%. It's been sitting in this kind of tarp type shed, and it does have a little bit of corrosion and staining and stuff like that in places. I like to go ahead and kind of replace all the hoses and make sure that they're all good too. As far as I can tell right now, everything is working. Actually, you know what? There's one thing I forgot to check. I forgot to check to see if it charges the battery. But that's not a big deal. I can check that later. It'll be fine. And it's starting to rain. Anyway, I do plan on doing, if I keep this bike or if I, whatever happens, I don't know what the future holds. This is kind of just a bit of a project bike. I've always wanted a Harley, and I'm not sure. Maybe I won't like actually owning one. I mean, who knows? It is difficult to get parts for some of these, and you do have to wait a while for them. I did find a shop that does a lot of the older stuff, so hopefully it makes my life a little bit easier with their expertise. But I definitely want to change the look of this bike. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the pedals. I know the grips and stuff will change. I'll get some other kind of accent pieces. I definitely want to repaint the frame. Maybe do something with the front forks. I do like girder front ends, just the style, the look, so I may change it to that. Build my own and do that kind of stuff, but I'm not sure on that yet. I've never worked on something like that. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that I could do. I'm just not 100% set on exactly what I'm going to do, but I can say that in the coming few years that this bike will change. I'm not sure if I'm going to get a bigger engine or if I'm going to keep this one. Like I said, there's all kinds of stuff that you can do. So who knows? But this bike, like I said, won't be the same as it is now. But I'm super happy. I'm ecstatic. It runs. It seems to be running really good. So on that note, and on this positive note, I'm going to leave it there. So I want to say thanks for watching and take it easy.